Apart from Eddie being peeved, and we're talking about Eddie Trunk here, at being shut out of his showcase, what I suggest is driving his view is his repeated contention on touring acts from yesteryear, which, let's face it, is 99.9% of his guests. Don't stay too long at the party, which translates, if you can't do it like you used to, retire with dignity and make way for those who can. In Australia, we only get his podcast and material randomly uploaded to YouTube, but we can still hear him spout all the time. He often supports his argument by pointing to outlier freaks like Sammy Hagar. We all know how much Eddie loves Sammy, and Steven Tyler, who can still deliver like it's the 70s even though they're in their 70s. The problem with Eddie Trunk's position is that it presupposes there is a vast queue of quality hard rock acts waiting to take the place of Dave and his peers. As much as I wish this were not true, outside the heavy metal underground, there isn't. I don't like to be critical of any musicians. As someone who progressed slightly beyond the garage a couple of times and faced a few live audiences, I can testify rock and roll is like football. Everyone's a critic from the sidelines, but when you go out and give it a try yourself, you realize it's not easy. As much as there is still quality new music to be found in rock, it's a trickle compared to the 70s, 80s, and even 90s. The other more important thing Eddie Trunk forgets is the genuine good times fellowship and enjoyment fans of our generation still derive out of seeing performers like Dave get out there and rip it to the best of their current ability. Your podcast coverage of the two shows, the commentary of yourselves and the two Rons, the interaction with the listeners, the pleasure at being comped shots reminiscent of prior eras, and speculation of what might happen next perfectly encapsulates all that has been fun about being a rock fan. And I thought the same about your coverage of the last Van Halen bash, but this even surpassed it. My only regret upon listening to it is I wish I had been there. I sincerely thank you for bringing all of us into this experience. And I know in particular, Quiet Dave doesn't like long letters. Some other listeners have been piqued at being critiqued for the same, although getting Damone on the pod was fair, passive-aggressive fuck you, if that's what it was. I don't think it was that.
That didn't even cross my mind.
No.
Honestly.
No, I don't think so. And that I have sadly lumbered you with yet another. Perhaps I could persuade Sean Penn to dust off his Spicoli persona and record, "Dude, you're listening to Dave and Dave Unchained." I am unconcerned whether this message is mentioned on your pod or not. I just felt the need to express my appreciation to you both for a job well done. Cheers, John McDonald from Australia. Well, John, that was really, really nice letter. Thank you so much for the kind words. Yes, a lot of time, money, and effort and passion was put into that particular trip, and we appreciate you recognizing that and pointing that out. In regards to Eddie Trunk, he gets a bit know-it-all here and there, and personally, I really think he's got a chip on his shoulder with Roth, because Roth has never interviewed with him, he's never met Roth, and I don't even know how that even happened, because I've interviewed Roth. How is it that Eddie Trunk hasn't interviewed Roth? Maybe he's got a problem because his name is Eddie. I have no idea. But but he's buddies with Sammy and Mike, and that's fine because they're really nice guys and all. But I think he's got like a little thing with Roth. My whole thing about his criticism is, he went a little hard and he wasn't there, and she certainly had some good points. I mean, his thing about the background vocals is dead on, that's for sure, and that needs to be fixed. But again with Dave, I'm going to go back to what I said in the news. David Lee Roth is not a rock band. David Lee Roth is an attitude, and that's very hard to translate on YouTube on clips. But anyway, look, everybody at that Cabo Wabo bash and everybody that we hung out with, we all had a blast. That was not made up. That is not, some sort of air that we're putting on for the podcast. That is genuine love and passion for the band and fun. all those guys. It's so funny because I was thinking about that. I felt like even though we just met them, it almost felt like we knew them in a way. It was interesting. We were all these middle-aged guys that grew up on Van Halen. But anyway, thank you for noticing that. It was a really kind words. Anything to say, Dave?
I, too, was going to say thank you for the kind words. And I would like to thank you in front of all our podcast listeners because you're the one doing all the hard work.
Oh, thank you very much. That was a bruiser. That was a bruiser, but it was worth it. It was worth it.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as Eddie Trunk goes, I think you're right. I think he does have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah. There's a little something there.
Yeah, and I do think he went overboard on that first show. If you're not there, it's one thing to say, hey, I had buddies, or, here's the feedback I've been getting from the show. But he seems to really like to dig it in because he's never got that interview.
Yeah, he's
with
got
Roth.
like a little rub there. He's got a little
rub there. I don't know what the hate, because believe me, if it was Sammy's first show, we'd have been like, oh, he sounds so good. I love him so much. It's like he is so far up Sammy's keister that he has to ask Michael Anthony to get out of it.
That's true. Oh my God.
mean, that's how, let's face facts. It's hard to take him seriously. Well, it's not hard to take him seriously, but it's hard to take seriously his impartiality with Dave and Sam because it's just not there. Look, brutal. The guy's entitled to his opinion and whatever, but I just think he needs to chillax a little bit.
Exactly. Letter number 4 comes from a guy named Clay. He says, hey, fellas, I just listened to the latest podcast and attaches a copy of the alternate Running with the Devil in case someone hasn't beat me to the punch already. Keep up the great work, Clay. Well, Clay, thanks so much. That is much appreciated, and Dave and I will certainly download that and add it to our collections for sure. And letter number 5 comes from Andrew Haberman, and he says, listen to episode 43 of the Van Halen 1984 episode from Discography with Eric Senich on Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much, Andrew. I appreciate you telling us about that. I am certainly going to listen to that tomorrow. I'm excited to hear that. I'm always curious when other podcasts do a Van Halen album. And we are on to letter number 6. It's from Southeast. Nice guy, Kurt Lancios. And he says, here is a Dropbox link to the alternative take of Running with the Devil, which was on YouTube recently, and I quickly grabbed it because I suspected it would be pulled down soon. Enjoy, Southeast. Nice guy, Kurt Lancios. Well, Dave, that comment you made seemed to have gone far, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
Everybody's sending us
I'm telling
copies.
you, whenever we don't know something or need something, just throw it out there and we'll get it. So thank you very much for that. Appreciate that a lot.
Absolutely. Letter number 7 comes from Shannon the Dude. He says, I dusted off Sammy's album that Eddie plays bass on, which, by the way, is the 1987 album, I Never Said Goodbye. Back Into You comes on. I'm like, hey, this is good. It's a catchy song. Then Sam sings, I'm back into you, all the way inside. Back into you, every inch this time. Come on, man. Does he think this is clever? Who does he think his audience is? Dave, for all his bozy bop can make you feel, even about a cold union. Come on, Sam. Shannon the Dude. Well, Shannon, Sam is guilty as charged. He cannot stop writing about sex, whether it's Finish What You Started, Black and Blue, Pleasure Dome, Spanked, oh, this motherfucker Up for Breakfast. He don't stop, this guy. Horny, that's for sure. What do you think, Dave?
Well, to be fair, you're right. But, I mean, it's not like Dave didn't write about these kind of things either.
Right.
But as we've said before, Dave has a flair and a way with a lyric.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas Sam is just more direct.
Right.
They just write differently. I mean, I'll be fair to Sam. It's not like he's the only guy writing that.
No, of course not.
I mean, that's been done for since the dawn of time.
Yep.
But I do agree with you. That's not Sam's finest hour as a writer lyrically. Although I do like that album. I definitely think that's one of his
it's a
better
great album.
albums.
It's a great album. I actually love it more and more as time goes on. I really appreciate it. Absolutely. So on to letter number 8. It is from Eric Frazier, and Eric says, "Howdy, boys. That was an excellent recap of your trip to Vegas. Thank you. I have to say that seeing some of the other YouTube videos from the Vegas shows where the camera was more in the back of the room sounded much better. One thing I can say about this lineup from a guitar player's perspective is a lover of the classic Eddie, is that Al Estrada does it justice. Eddie's guitar tone on recent tours has been more grainier tone and sounds more like what's on A Different Kind of Truth. Al Estrada's guitar tone is much closer to the classic album tone, which is refreshing from a player's perspective, and he absolutely killed all eras of DLR's music. On the backing vocals conspiracy, the other off-putting part from the Vegas show, besides being too loud in the mix, was that it was so obviously tracked and piped into the room. If you listen, you can hear Dave's voice in the blend of voices, which would be impossible while he's yelping over the lead vocals. Those backing vocals are overly compressed, sounding nothing like the room mix, and it really just takes you out of how great the band is playing. Keep up the great pod, Eric Frazier." Well, Eric, yes, David Lee Roth should have kept the live background singers. I really don't think it's cool. Forget about Roth. Just anybody doing that. It's just hire people to do the vocals. I understand assistance is needed. Understandable. He's 65-year-old rock star, no problem. But just hire people. That's all. Billy Joel does it at the Garden every night. He's got guys to do the background high parts. That's fine. It's not a problem. He's old too. He's 70 years old. Just don't pipe it in. You know? What do you think, Dave?
I agree, but that's never going to happen. I will say, when we saw him live, it didn't stand out as much. It was more blended in.
Yeah, it was.
Although
I have to say, the Kiss tour, it was way more prominent. It was like right in the face.
Well, you know what was interesting was he did mention that when he saw the videos from way back, he heard it. And I will say that when we were up close to Roth, I didn't notice it as much. But the second night we saw him, which was Roth's third night in Vegas, and we were farther back, I did notice it more at that time.
Yeah.
And I totally agree that there are definitely times when Roth is singing over himself, so I would go all in on that bet that they're piped in. But you know what? That's the way it is. It's an easy way to do it. And what can I tell you? I don't know. Hire people who can sing background vocals, but that's like a losing battle.
Absolutely. And letter number 9 comes from Paul Davis. "Hey guys, thanks for including our interviews. That whole meetup and interviews with everyone was podcast gold. The best thing is that thanks to you guys, me, Scott, Kevin now have a living memory of the DLR weekend, which was saved for posterity. P.S. I don't think Scott owns any music from Saigon Kick. It was great to meet you both, and I'll look forward to more pods in the future. Best regards, Paul Davis." Well, Paul, you were such a great guy, and it was so great to hang out with all those guys, Scott and Kevin and all those guys that were there, and the Rons. It was a fantastic time for us, just as much as you guys, and you guys helped make the pod even more fun and the trip more fun for Dave and I. Right, Dave?
What a great time.
Yeah.
I would totally do that again.
Yeah.
We have to organize another meetup somewhere sometime.
Absolutely.
Around some central event, yeah.
We are on to letter number 10 from Subway Scott Mendat. All forgiveness if this has already been touched by another listener, but Dave and Van Halen have always done their best to control the narrative and keep things in-house. While he didn't go on air, Mike Musselman provided you with some nice insights to the DLR machine when you bumped into him in Vegas. And I'm sure everyone has seen by now, Musselman has been replaced behind the kit on the Kiss tour. Any idea if he got the boot for chatting it up with you guys? If so, maybe you can get him on the air for a real interview to further discuss. Anyway, enjoying the podcast as always. Keep it up. Bozy Bop. Subway Scott Mendet from Nashville, Tennessee. Oh, I don't think that